Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Crypto Starship. Its mission, to explore new technologies, to seek out new life in the crypto universe, to boldly go where no blockchain has gone before.
Hey everyone, this is Captain Derek.
Captain Eric.
Lieutenant Plu.
How is everybody doing today?
Doing great, Derek. Doing great, Derek. I know it's about 1 a.m. in Vietnam, so we've been holding you up from getting some valuable sleep. I can see your hair right now in Skype. It's a little crazy. I think we need a
the professor from Back to the Future. I feel like that's what I look like
yeah, exactly.
Right. There we go.
The glasses and the hair spiked up. It's incredible.
I'm jealous of that look.
How's
Awesome.
how's the ETH convention, Ethereum Developer Convention? How's that going?
It's going great, man. There's a ton of developers here, a lot of founders. It's a great energy, and we keep bumping into random founders,
It's crazy.
developers. Yeah.
The world it seems so small, but so big at the same time.
Yeah, we have a great story. Last night, I was actually picking up my sister from the airport, and I was coming back this was at 1 a.m. And Ethan actually still works at a restaurant, a really nice restaurant locally. And we were going to go eat with him late night. And he messages me, "Hey man, the food is ready. We're looking forward to see you." And I get there and I walk in and I sit down at the table he got ready for me and my sister and her wife. And there was like these stickers on the ground on the table. I'm like, "Those look like crypto kitties. What is this?" And my sister was like, "What's crypto kitties?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I don't want to explain this." And then Ethan comes over and he's like, "Bro, guess who I just found at one of my tables?"
Yeah. So I pull up my phone. I got a photo on there. I said, "This is Arthur and Fabiano, the two co-founders of CryptoKitties." And Eric's like, "What? Mind blown." And I said, "Get ready for it," because they're still sitting right over there.
Eating dinner at 1:30 after the hackathon. They're actually should be on our podcast tomorrow now.
Perfect.
Which is incredible.
We got to talking, and they're excited for us, excited about the podcast, excited about they're from Vancouver, coming to the United States and being recognized as almost local celebrities is great.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's such a small world right now.
I mean, they are celebrities. They're outside of Vitalik. There's fewer names that are more recognizable in Ethereum than CryptoKitties.
Right?
Exactly. It's crazy. It's funny how this week we've had B Token stay at our Airbnb. We've had CryptoKitties being served by Ethan at the restaurant. And now both of them are coming on the podcast. It's just amazing how the community is evolved, and when they all come together in one city, how you can bump into them, meet new people really quickly, and how open everybody is.
Yeah, I found that as well in Singapore at the Blockchain Economic Forum. Everyone was very accessible. I've been to other industry conferences in marketing or e-commerce where it felt like people were very difficult to reach. And in crypto, it just feels like it's a small community. Everyone's here to help each other. And it's really easy to meet people that you've only seen on the internet.
Yeah, I know. I could never imagine that this community would be so great and so fun on top of being just on the cutting edge of technology. But I've never had such a great experience with a community in my entire life, especially something new in technology. And I'm loving every minute of it. And we still have 2 days of the hackathon here in Denver. So we never know what we're going to bump into in the next 48 hours.
Awesome. So listeners, if you can get yourself to a conference, I think you guys would really enjoy it. And we hope to bring you some of those guests that we met soon.
Exactly. I would highly recommend going to a conference. Lieutenant Plu is going to his first crypto conference in about 3 weeks here in Denver. So
that's it.
He gets his first exposure to this crazy world. I know, Derek, you and I have been to probably combined, 10 plus conferences easily in the space. So, and we both have 2 or 3 more coming up in the next couple months. So
yeah,
really just go there. You meet a lot of great people and have a lot of accessibility to amazing talent.
Yeah, totally. So
how's everything going in Vietnam, Derek?
Vietnam's good. It's a little boring right now since everything is closed for New Year's and a lot of people have left to go back to their family. So I've been just spending a lot of time in front of my computer. Lately, I've been writing some new ideas about crypto and security and different things that I'll share with you guys when they're ready to go. Should be in the next week or 2. But yeah, it's cool.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear about it.
Thanks. Yeah,
Great.
I think I'm going to help throw the meetup, the crypto meetup in Saigon. Since there isn't a meetup coming up soon, and I'm here for a few weeks, I just decided to be the one to throw the meetup. So hopefully
That's awesome.
something will come of that. So today we're talking about
Great.
airdrops. To make a bit of a segue there.
Boom.
Boom. We have segued.
So we're segueing. Ethan, are we ready to take off?
Beep, boop, 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 boop. Ready for liftoff.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
Nice. On to airdrops.
We should have a dropping sound. We'll get a dropping sound for next time. Oh, there you go.
That's something like a dropping sound.
Yeah.
What's up, big
Free money.
Is that a good drop?
Free money.
Free money.
Free money coming at you. ETH Connect, I'm telling you, ETH Connect. Look
ETH
for
Connect.
it. Look
Yeah.
for it.
Ben Connect, ETH Connect.
Yeah.
Ethan's hosting that conference, New York, in June. Just kidding.
Don't show up.
Don't
Don't show up.
I won't be there.
Guaranteed.
Awesome. So, Derek, what topics do we want to cover in airdrops today?
Yeah. So airdrops have kind of really taken the community by storm in the last 2-3 months. I think let's talk about number one, what they are, just kind of give a primer on airdrops for people for whom this is a new concept. And then let's talk about
Like Ethan?
Yeah. And I think it's great to have someone who is learning about it for the first time or first-ish time help us explain it in a easy to understand way. So I'd like to talk about it from the perspective of people who are receiving the airdrops, because it is one of the few ways in the industry where you can earn money with basically no risk. You don't have to put any of your own capital into the ecosystem to do an airdrop. And then how it's impacting the ICO space, impacting ICO projects. What are the pros and cons of doing an airdrop if you are running an ICO? And finally, how airdrops affect investors. If you're investing in an altcoin, investing in an ICO, and that ICO is doing an airdrop, how that affects you potentially positively, potentially negatively. Just kind of discuss the ramifications of airdrops in general from those 3 different perspectives. So that was kind of my thought going into this process today.
Amazing, amazing. I think I would love to cover all those topics and hear what you have to say about them and add some opinion. Lieutenant Plu, make sure you throw some questions at us during this session so we are making sure that the audience overall has an understanding of this space and the benefits of it and how it's affecting the community.
Definitely, because right now when I think airdrop, I think C-130 rolling down the strip and parachute and just
Coming out of the back.
dropping out. So it's kind of where my mind is at. Would like to reel it back into the crypto universe here.
That's great. That's great. Now I'm picturing a food supply drop over a foreign country somewhere with the food crates coming out, the parachutes opening up and those landing. So it's quite interesting how that's transitioning into the crypto world. Derek, do you want to start off with the first subject and your thoughts around it?
So Captain Eric, do you want to start off by explaining what an airdrop is and how it works?
Yeah, for sure. So the basis of an airdrop overall is do X for Y. So it could be join a Telegram group, and if you're actively engaged, we'll give you X amount of tokens for that participation. Invite your friends to our software or our white paper reading or X, Y, and Z, or join the forum or put a signature in your forum profile that links back to our company, some kind of action in exchange for token. And that token is a form of payment, if you want to say. So there's multiple ways that airdrops can exist or be participated with, but the fundamental basis is usually a marketing approach to getting people to join a community by exchanging tokens for action. Captain Derek, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would broadly classify airdrops into 2 buckets. Bucket number 1 is the airdrops you get into just by joining a Telegram group. There's a lot of airdrops that are just join our community and you'll get $20 in tokens or whatever the case is.
Yep.
And the second bucket is things where you have to do more than that. So you have to refer your friends, you have to go through KYC, meaning you have to submit your passport.
Know your consumer, which is KYC.
Know your consumer, exactly. Know your customer. So I would broadly classify it into those 2 buckets, the ones where it's super easy to get and the ones that are a little bit more work to get. But yeah, I think essentially it's compensating people in exchange for taking some kind of action. And typically airdrops don't require you to put any Ethereum or money into the ecosystem. You just take some kind of action and you get a certain amount of tokens back in return.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree.
Lieutenant Blue, any questions about that so far?
I definitely have some questions. The way I'm imagining it right now is the founders of these new planets want people to move to their planet, right? So they're saying, come move to our planet. We'll give you free money.
Yeah,
Does that sound about
Yeah,
right?
it's like
that's a good way of thinking of it.
it's like when we wanted to settle America, we gave farmers free land. There was a term for that. Does anyone remember what that was called?
Oh,
It's like-
Ooh, this is definitely not a history podcast.
We're about the future. We're not about the past here.
I think it was called an airdrop.
Yes, we're airdropping
Land drop.
It was called the crop
Okay,
drop.
perfect. Okay, so let's start from the first one of the three, from people who are receiving airdrops. I think that of the three communities, the people who are receiving airdrops, the ICOs, and the investors, these are the clearest winners. There's no downside for people who are receiving airdrops. I think for people who are running ICOs and for investors, there's pros and cons to it. For people who are receiving airdrops,
Yes.
there's really, from what I can tell, no downside to it, except for the fact that you have to put in a good amount of time to do this. Because each airdrop typically only gives you between $5 and $50,
Correct.
you have to register for quite a lot of airdrops to earn any significant amount of money, especially if you're coming from somewhere like the United States or Australia or one of the expensive countries. But if you're coming from India, the Philippines, one of the countries where the cost of living is lower, you can make $50 for 20 minutes of work, which could be a full-time wage in a lot of these countries. And crypto is an international thing. So
Yeah, and not being financial advisors or giving financial advice in any way, shape, or form on this podcast. If you are receiving airdrops at $50, later on that might be worth $500. So that 20 minutes of work could pay off exponentially for those individuals long term if they turn this into a full-time job. And if you look at wages in different countries around the world, $50 for some people is more than a day's wage. So that's a huge incentive. Now,
it's more than a month's wage sometimes.
Exactly, more than a month's wage for sometimes. But you also have to find a balance here, right? Do most of these airdrops and companies want individuals that are coming from these countries that don't have as much spending power per se, as much influence? And I think that will ultimately become a questionable technique for many people if the majority of your participants are coming from these per se lower wage countries, which might not provide as much value depending on what your company is long term. So there's a big debate about that overall. And you also see huge segmentation of participants in Telegrams being heavy in the Asia community, Asian-based communities. A lot of Telegram members I know are international, a lot less from the United States because of KYC and other elements. So these are all things I believe are being debated on a regular basis around airdrops in general, and if they're the right things to do.
And just to clarify, when you say because of KYC, you mean because the United States it makes it more difficult for people to invest in cryptocurrencies and ICO specifically. A lot of the people who are investing in these projects come from other countries.
Yeah, exactly. Because those projects aren't necessarily targeting consumers in the States from day one because of that element. You find a lot more of their community being built in other countries, whether it be in Europe or Asia heavily. I think a lot of the participation comes from the Asian-based countries. You don't get as much from the United States and South America as well from founders I've talked to. And that might be a multitude of reasons, but one of them being KYC.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, for people who are just getting started in crypto, I think airdrops is actually an interesting way to potentially get your feet wet and start earning some free tokens. If I were to do that process, I think there's a lot of websites that list upcoming airdrops, active airdrops that you can go to and just find this ICO is giving away $20, this ICO is giving away $40. These are the ICOs that you only need to join the Telegram for. These are the ones that you need to do KYC for. And you can just go down the list and apply for 3 or 4 of these an hour and make $50 an hour or something like that in tokens.
Yeah.
So if you're just getting into crypto and want to get your feet wet and understand what it's like to receive tokens, to go on an exchange and sell them, how Telegram works, if you just want to start experiencing your first token, experiencing your first dip in the economy, I think this is a good way to do it.
An engagement with a company. I think this is a great way to do it. And just going off of that, and to help Lieutenant Plu with this, some easy resources, or at least one that I go to on a regular basis, is airdropalert.com. And that is just a website that shows you an aggregation of airdrops that are currently available that you can look into how you have to participate. They give you details on what you need to do, what the reward is from a token perspective. And it's a place you should check out on a regular basis to see if there's anything you can get involved with if there's no limitations based off where you are around the world. So that's one resource I think that's really powerful that I go to on a regular basis. I don't know, Derek, if you have anything yourself that you go to.
Yeah, I personally don't really do airdrops. It's just too much. I don't know. It's too much clutter for me.
80-20.
80-20, exactly.
Do you know of any resources that you would tell anyone on this podcast, like Lieutenant Plu, to use if they wanted to jump into this?
I think the one you said, ICOalerts.com, was that right?
No, it's Airdrop Alert. ICO Alert is great for ICOs. Airdropalerts.com is a great dashboard of what's going on and easy access to everything that's going. I think that's the best one in one of the industry standards in the space for easy access and not having to run around the web trying to find airdrops by yourself.
In terms of really quickly, in the eyes of the consumer, when you say there's almost no downside, what I'm imagining in some sort of way, and tell me if I'm wrong or what if they're addressing this issue, if it even is an issue. What I'm imagining is Oprah saying, "Look under your seats. You get free coins. You get free coins. You get free coins." And everyone's so excited and everyone's so happy. And then at the end of the year, Uncle Sam comes around and says, "Oh, you got all these coins, all these money. Now you have to pay taxes on it." And I understand that the cryptocurrency has not sort of aligned in that way yet, where it's still so decentralized and so there's such a huge
Wild
market.
West.
It's
Yeah.
the Wild West out there. So I understand that is there a potential for something like that happening? You get all these free coins at the end of the year. What do
Yeah,
you see
so
happening?
from a tax perspective, this is similar, and we don't need to get into too much detail, and you should consult an accountant and go into this on yourself based off where you live. But in the United States, right now, from the understanding from a tax code perspective, tokens are treated as assets, right? So if you're given an airdrop, most accountants will tell you you have to base that asset off of you investing $0. So if you do sell it later on, let's say you sell it each token for $1, you have to say you had a gain of $1 and pay taxes against that $1. But you don't pay any taxes until you actually sell an asset. So that
Actually, I think for an airdrop, it would probably be considered earned income instead of capital gains. So I don't know if they would consider your basis as.
So
it's a little bit different, I think, than a typical crypto investment, where if you buy it for $500 and you sell it for $1,000, because you invested capital, it'd be a $500 as your cost and then $1,000 as the value, and the difference would be what you earned as a gain on your capital. But if your basis is $0 and you're essentially earning tokens for your time in registering and selling them, I think that would be considered earned income rather than capital gains tax. But again, I'm not consultant accountant for all that stuff.
So just for Captain Derek and Lieutenant Plu, there's a great podcast episode on Unchained with two accountants in the space that talk about this specifically. We're not accountants. We do not give financial advice. Where you live is going to determine all of these elements. So I talked to a local professional, but I believe 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a great episode on Unchained with two accountants that talk specifically about these elements and the differences between earned income and personal gain taxes. So I would listen to that episode and then find an accountant to talk about it specifically. But this is an area where you have to figure out the best process for yourself, Lieutenant Plu, and determine how you're going to handle the tax situation when you participate in these airdrops.
All right, back in the Starship.
Thank you.
Back in the Starship.
Back in the Starship. We are grounded. We should probably get back to taking off. What were the other areas we were going to discuss about airdrops, Captain Derek?
Okay, so we talked about it from the perspective of people who are receiving airdrops, receiving free tokens. Now let's talk about it from the perspective of ICOs who are issuing airdrops.
Perfect. So as you've looked at multiple ICO papers, white papers, Derek, and seen how companies have built their communities, I'm assuming you see some trends in this space of how these ICOs are leveraging airdrops as a marketing tool and to build their community overall. Do you see any major trends in the space of what's going on right now with those companies and their leveraging of airdrops?
Yeah, I think basically everybody's doing an airdrop now. Which
You get an airdrop. You get an airdrop. You get an airdrop.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this. So personally, I don't love it for a few reasons. I think it's a little bit of a nuclear arms race where because other people are doing airdrops and everyone has 20, 30,000 people in their Telegram now because they're giving away free tokens to people who are in their Telegram, that means that if you don't do it and you only have 2,000 people in your Telegram, your ICO is going to look like it's weaker than everybody else's. So now you have to do an airdrop. And I think a lot of people, they underestimate how much an airdrop costs, because if you're giving $50 to 20,000 people, that's $1 million.
Yeah, that's $1 million.
Right? That's $1 million right there. If you're raising
I'm going to trust
$10 million,
that. I'm going to trust your math on that.
That's definitely right. $1 million.
Yeah. So plus each of those transactions, because you're sending tokens, is going to cost you $3 to $5 in gas fees, right? So now you're spending $100,000 on gas fees, $1 million on giving away free tokens. And remember that most of these people who are getting these free tokens are really, they don't really care about your project, right? They're going to airdropalert.com. They're finding out that you're giving away $30. They're coming to your Telegram. They're picking up their free tokens and going on to the next thing. So you're essentially taking money either out of your pocket to give to these people, or you're creating inflation, right? You're printing new tokens, diluting the system, which is essentially taking money out of your investors' pockets and giving it to people who don't necessarily care about your project. So there's that factor. There's just the cost factor, where I'm not sure if people realize or like fully, I'm not sure if people fully realize that there is a significant cost to doing these airdrops.
Completely. It's one of those things where, and I also believe, since everyone's just driving it to a Telegram group and we're determining the value of an ICO, or one of the elements that people believe the drive value into ICO is the amount of community that is in the Telegram and how active they are. This is just a repeatable process and no one's really innovating out of that, right? There has to be a better way to leverage airdrops if they're going to do it. And I'm not sure how many people have explored other avenues, but I think there's areas to innovate in this space to make it more effective, especially if you have a real product. I think one of the biggest areas that we're having problems with is these companies and ICOs literally don't have a real product yet. It's just a white paper. So the only way they can drive any value from an airdrop is to a Telegram. So they're spending all this money to build a community that may or may not be active at all. They don't know where those people are from in certain cases. And they're only really doing it to raise money down the road, right? So is there any good intention behind what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah. I think the kind of airdrop that I really like is the airdrops where they don't announce it beforehand. So certain ICO projects, they cancel their crowd sale because they raised all the money they needed through pre-sale and private investors. So crowd sale is what we would typically think of as an ICO. And what they do is, so they raise all the money from private investors, from syndicate pools. That's where investors pull together and invest a large amount together. And instead of just canceling their ICO altogether, they then airdrop a certain amount of tokens to their follower base. But what they don't pre-announce it. So it's basically saying, hey, for the people who've already followed us, you've been following us for a few months, we want to show a token of appreciation, huh? And give everyone some tokens, but they're not publishing it in a way where people who are just looking for airdrops can jump on, because they're not announcing that they're going to do an airdrop. They're saying, as of right now, we're going to do an airdrop to everyone who's in our channel. And if you join after we announce the airdrop, you don't get the airdrop. So it's really them trying to reward their existing community.
I love that. I think that's a great approach. I think there's some innovation in the space where when more projects have a product when they launch, driving people to leverage the product instead of just Telegram is going to be a huge innovation in the space as well. And then also just really finding the ICOs that, here's another thing about airdrops. You can also use it as a counter, where if a company didn't do an airdrop and their community is really large, it's actually hugely beneficial towards the value of the business. I think if they got those more organically based off their idea and they didn't do an airdrop, you can counter your thought process of this is a great company because they didn't leverage an airdrop tactic in order to build their community. So you can look at it at multiple directions when it comes to the entrepreneurs that are building these companies themselves. They can leverage airdrops to build their community, or they can build a community without airdrops and probably have more value in that community overall and more active, engaged individuals. So I think you can look at it in two ways, where you don't always have to do an airdrop in order to be a successful company. Like, that's not in the requirements of this space. Like, it's not like the checklist is, okay, get an entity in Singapore. Great. Put a team together, get advisors, run an airdrop, do the ICO. Great. I did all the check marks. Now I can go and build my product. Like, you don't
I'm writing
have
this
to
down. I'm writing this down.
Yeah, you should write this down, Ethan. This is not the checklist that's required in order to be in this space. And
Is there a checklist
You
out there?
didn't get the checklist?
Maybe we should create one.
we should
Oh my God.
I get the
didn't get
Crypto
it. I didn't
Starship
get
checklist.
I'm lost. Is it like a grocery list? I
It's
got
like
that.
the top Reddit post.
It's
man.
it's
You should
under
tell-
r/r/BitConnect.
I'm gonna look. BitConnect. All right. All right. I'm very familiar with BitConnect.
The world is not anymore the way it used to be. No.
BitConnect. Oh God.
I have a quick question. I
Yeah.
wanted to something you had mentioned earlier, Captain Derek, is talking about inflation in terms of putting out coins into the market in a sense, or printing new coins. And I just wanted to touch on that and maybe get some insight into. I thought you couldn't just create coins. I thought the point of these coins were that you had to work for them or mine them in a sense.
It depends completely on the project. Bitcoin has a limit of 21 million coins forever. Nobody can ever make more than that. And there's a very specific algorithm that they've set. During the ICO, certain coins, there's different ways of doing it, right? You can say that we've set aside 50 million tokens for our ICO and that's it. Or you can say that we're raising $50 million and there's different bonus tiers. So if you invested a larger amount of money or if you invested earlier, then you'll get you'll get a cheaper price. And you can say that we're going to do airdrops as well. And whatever the total amount of tokens that amounts to, that's going to be 50% of the token supply. And then we're going to create another 50% that becomes the supply that the company owns. So if you give away more airdrops, that means that, so let's say that the total supply, let's say you were going to do an ICO that had 10 million tokens and you were going to create 10 million tokens of your own. And there's 20 million total tokens now. But now you did an airdrop where you gave away 2 million tokens. So now there's 12 million tokens in the ICO and you create another 12 million tokens so that it's still a 50%, right? You still did 50% during your ICO, but now because you diluted the $10 million, each investor that actually invested in your project is getting a little bit less value. Did that make sense?
Yes.
That totally made sense.
And going back to your mining element, there's certain blockchains like Bitcoin that Derek talked about that requires mining in order to get rewarded in a Bitcoin form, or Ethereum, which requires that as well. Most of these tokens are built on top of the Ethereum platform, so they're not necessarily being mined in order to be produced.
Gotcha.
So they're what we call an ERC20 token. It's just one of the types of tokens. So they're not necessarily being mined in order to exist. They're just built on top of the Ethereum blockchain, which is its own platform for mining currently if it doesn't switch this year. So there's a couple different ways you have to think about it. Certain blockchains and certain coins are going to be native blockchains, which are their own blockchain that has some kind of method of capturing and gathering and distributing the coins, whether it be mining with hardware, which most people know about, or if it's holding a coin and holding those coins reward with more coins to those holders to distribute the coins, or proof of stake. Those are different ways of thinking about native blockchains. Tokens themselves can be created kind of with a few button clicks. So it's a little different. And that's why a lot of people talk about token economics and the supply and demand and price versus supply and so on, instead of Ethereum, which is the tokens are created over time, instead of an individual or group having the complete token economic power of that individual coin. Would you like to expand on that, Derek?
I'd just like to share a story, which not the happiest of stories, but a couple weeks ago, there was a fork of Monero called Monero Gold. And they ended up just printing millions and millions of dollars of extra tokens and selling them on the markets and then disappearing. So
that's stuff you have to look for as individual and make sure you don't fall for that. And this is a common thing.
Yeah. So sometimes these limitations of how many tokens you can print are hard coded into the code itself, like with Bitcoin. And sometimes it's the projects tell you in the white paper how many tokens they're going to print, and you kind of take their word for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Take their word.
Kind of, which you shouldn't really in many cases.
Especially with projects where, in certain projects like Ripple, for example, where the people who founded it are very well known and they're operating in Silicon Valley, stuff like that, I think you can extend a little bit more trust. But for something like a Monero Gold, where nobody knows who founded them, the token is anonymous, there's no real names on the website. Like,
yeah,
it's you want to be a lot more careful with that kind of stuff.
This is where you do your research.
This is where you do your research.
Awesome.
Exactly. So one last thing from the ICO's perspective, as if you're an ICO project considering whether or not to do an airdrop, one last thing to consider is that the people who chase airdrops are typically the ones who are going to sell first. So if you have a bunch of investors who've done their research, they've watched the YouTube videos, read your white paper, maybe they've met you in person, and they're buying the token to hodl. And then you have 20,000 people who are chasing the airdrop. Those 20,000 people are going to be the ones who sell first, and they're going to set the price, right? Because if other people aren't trading and they're the ones that are trading, they're the ones who are going to set the price. And that often creates a dynamic in the markets that ICOs don't want.
Exactly.
You have basically people dumping on day one. So just something to consider. I'm not saying not to do airdrops, because again, if everyone else has 30,000 people in their Telegram and you don't, like that is a tough position to be in. And as someone who came from the internet marketing world, I definitely understand how important perception is. I think it's just, there's ways to do airdrops that better takes care of your community. And I think I want projects to just be a little bit more aware that investors are aware of these dynamics now. We're getting more and more aware of the cost of airdrops, and that everyone's doing these and kind of trying to figure out new ways to really gauge if projects are good projects, or if there's real interest, or if it's just airdrops. And yeah, just another thing to consider.
Completely agree. And you can, like I said, this is not part of the checklist. You don't have to do this, and you don't have to do it the same way everyone else does it. So we can all be innovative in the space if we want to leverage these types of tools to be more powerful for the companies overall in different ways. So I'll be interested to see how it evolves over the next 6 to 12 months.
One thing I would love as a regular ICO investor is I would love to see projects lock up the airdrop tokens for longer than the ICO investors. So maybe the airdrop tokens get released a month after ICO investors. I think that's something that
could be quite interesting.
Every investor would like. At least speaking for myself, that's something that I would love to see in the projects that I'm investing in.
That's great. Derek, what is the last element of this we want to discuss today?
Airdrops from the perspective of investors, which we kind of bled over to that already.
Boom. Look at that. You already covered it. We already covered it. Maybe we can have a few more investors on the podcast in the future and bring up a few of these topics in aggregate to discuss that with them directly. I think an investor-based episode would be great. So maybe we should pull on a couple more investors, bring up things like airdrops, ICO, token dynamics, other elements that could be really powerful for the community.
Yeah, I definitely agreed. And I think the main thing we haven't talked about yet for investors is it's probably more important today to start ignoring Telegram accounts. Like, they're less trustworthy than they've ever been.
Yep.
And instead start looking at how many YouTube reviews are there of the project, how many actual comments are there of people who are genuinely interested in the topic. As in, go through the Telegram and count how many messages there are in the last 24 hours that are genuinely about the project.
The engagement level. I think the engagement level is more of a metric you should be looking at. How many people are actually talking on the Telegram, engaged, actively communicating, the flow, how quickly messages disappear, even those types of things compared to just the number at the top could be more powerful. It'll be quite interesting if someone eventually comes up with deeper analytical platform for Telegram, which they can tap into a group to see engagement and other metrics on that individual group.
I've actually spent probably 2 hours looking for something like that. And there's one tool called Combot, which I tried and sort of it worked. Mostly it didn't work.
So don't leverage this.
We probably shouldn't talk about stuff that doesn't work.
Great recommendation.
It's on the right path. It's on the path.
Yeah. But yeah, I looked for other Telegram bots, but I really couldn't find anything that did Telegram analytics. So
I wonder if we can make a Google Sheet out of that. Grab some devs, make a Google Sheet that you can plug into any Telegram group and pull some metrics from it.
Yes, because we don't have enough software projects we're working on right now.
Hey, Ethan, you want to start?
I'm pretty busy. I'm on 6 different forums right now posting, trying to get some crypto.
Awesome. That's great. I think if anyone knows of a tool in our audience, can you please send it our way? We will be providing a link in the show notes how to contact us. And it'll be great to bring that kind of stuff to the community as tools to leverage in the future.
Awesome. So just to recap, if you're receiving airdrops, clear win. I think there's no downside except for time. If you're an ICO project, just carefully consider the pros and cons and think of how you can structure your airdrop in a way that it's beneficial for your community in the long run. And I think doing an airdrop there's probably more benefits than costs still, because maybe it does cost you $1 million, but that increased awareness and increased perception helps you land the $10 million. So I think overall it's still a good thing for ICO projects. Again, not financial advice, but just consider the pros and cons. And for investors, do more research and don't trust the airdrop hype.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is not a checklist. You don't need to do this, and there are more innovative ways that people haven't come up with yet to leverage this type of marketing technique. Awesome. Lieutenant Blue, before we go, I want to make sure we didn't tread over anything or cover any details that we could have added more value to the overall crew. Do you have any other questions or thoughts about this that we should cover before we head out?
No questions. No questions that come to mind in terms of thoughts. On the consumer side, these airdrops, yeah, it's a great way. It's a clear win. Also, kind of how you were talking about, you want to make sure that we don't look at these numbers in terms of people just getting free crypto, that just inflating these telegrams, right? On the consumer side, do your research, look into the coin, see what it's all about, see if you can get behind it, read those white papers, get in there.
Or if you're really lucky, waiter at a really good restaurant in Denver, hang out a lot, wait until the Ethereum hackathon comes, and then meet all the founders of amazing products, and they will help you along the way.
That also helps. That doesn't hurt necessarily.
But if you're doing airdrops, honestly, it takes you longer to read the white paper than to just register for the airdrop and get the token. So
yeah,
sometimes you just don't even do your research. Just get the tokens.
Just get the
dedicate
tokens.
4 hours a day to getting airdrops. Awesome. Well, Captain Derek, thank you for staying up so late for us tonight. I'm glad we're headed back to Earth for another adventure in the Earth crypto universe.
Time to refuel.
Go to some more conferences and get ready for the next episode. This is the end of episode 2 of the Crypto Starship. I'm super excited that everybody's here listening, and I'm excited to continue our journey through the crypto universe. I'm Captain Eric.
Captain Derek.
Lieutenant Blue.
And we're out.
The Crypto Starship is a production of Starship Media LLC. The contents of the show, including our videos, podcasts, and our website, are provided for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. It's not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investing, or trading advice of any kind. You shouldn't make any financial, investing, trading, or life decisions based on our show. Understand that investing or trading in digital assets has potential risks involved. Before investing, make sure to do your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor.